these attacks that Ukraine has been conducting in what would be considered non-battlefield targets, I think, back in the Russian, deep within Russian lines, behind Russian lines, the Kerch Strait Bridge, I believe this is the third time it's been attacked since the war has commenced, these Russian bombers. Now, here's an interesting question. The attacks get a lot of headlines, but as an intel officer, or even back when I was a junior intel analyst, the first question that I have after I see a strike like this is BDA. What's the BDA? That was the training that I always received. What is the battle damage assessment? Is this operational? Is it inoperational? Is it repairable? Is it still at full capacity? Is that diminished capacity? How long is it going to take to get it back online? Or do we have total destruction? And in some of these cases, it feels like the headlines are a little bit separated from the reality that's actually on the ground. Tony, what's your read on it?
Well, the first thing you have to do to get to the BDA is get through the propaganda. And so what you've seen is, no doubt, this was a masterful attack. I'm not going to diminish the amount of gumption and planning it took to get those drones into those targets all the way to Siberia. With that said, we have to evaluate what we see. A lot of the footage we've been given is from dates not relevant to this one. That is to say, the videos of the strikes aren't necessarily related to the Spiderweb project. They're old or from different locations from different times. And what I'm seeing is an amplification primarily by the British media to make everybody believe there was something like $7 to $9 billion of damage done. I've seen that figure. It's like, yeah, that's not relevant. Was there significant damage done? Yeah, they hit a significant number of Tu-95 Bear bombers, which are part of the strategic nuclear force of the Russian nuclear triad. So was that significant? Yeah. But it wasn't anywhere near as significant as we were being led to believe. So we can't even get to the BDA until we figure out what exactly the damage was, because we're not really being told what it was. And secondly, why are we not being told? Well, the amplification here, Jack, is because we are supposed to buy into this idea as Americans that the Ukrainians, oh, yeah, they can still beat the Russians. They're not licked. And if they can do this with $40 million, imagine what they could do with several more billion. In other words, they're trying to both disrupt the peace process, which we know they're doing openly, and trying to eventually convince us, the United States, that the Biden policy was the correct policy, to give them unlimited money. And I do a lot of research. You know that. I do a lot of show prep. There's constant videos on YouTube talking about how brave the Ukrainian soldiers are and how they've adapted technology. So there's a full-blown charm campaign against us, focused on us. So this fifth-generation warfare, it's being directed on us. Lindsey Graham's part of it. I just don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, once again, we see that one side is winning in the information narrative. One side is winning the information war, and another side is winning the actual war on the ground.
Right.
Because
exactly.
When I go and look at the front lines over in eastern Ukraine, when I look at Donetsk, Lugansk, or some of these areas of Sumy or around Kharkov, other areas that have been under dispute between the Russians and the Ukrainians, I don't see the Ukrainians making advances on the battlefield. I see the Russians making advances. And by the way, not in these huge, the barrel runs, the blitzkrieg attacks that you would see from an American military perspective or NATO perspective. It is slow encirclement operations and slowly grinding them down.
So let me hit that, because I see this constant demunition by certain voices within conservative media about how effective the Russians are. Jack Keane was on the other day talking about, almost dismissive, they've been fighting to take Ukraine for the past 3 years, and they're still not doing it. It's like, Jack, that's not what they're trying to do. This is not a war of maneuver. This is not a war of blitzkrieg. It's a war of attrition. and the Russian objective is to degrade and basically this demilitarize Ukraine and the West. So that's what they're doing. They're doing it slow and methodic because the Ukrainians keep throwing stuff against their defenses and and losing. So why on earth?
It's attrition
would you-
warfare, and we
It's
don't
attrition
understand
warfare.
attrition warfare
And
because
so
we don't
so
practice
when
that.
Jack says they're not winning, it's like you don't understand what they're doing if you say that, and that's a bad sign.
Right. So they've created essentially a position where they can take up strong positions in the east, and rather than focus on taking land, the focus is actually on detriting and attriting the Ukrainian military.
Exactly.
Because
Precisely.
they know that it doesn't
Precisely.
matter how many weapons and artillery and ammunition and the rest of it. And I was just in the region. I was in Rzeszów, Poland, which is right on the border. My family lives right on the Ukrainian border with Poland. We were just there a week ago. And all of that ammunition, the NATO supplies that are running through Rzeszów, and then also through Romania and other spots into Ukraine. Okay. Even if that didn't stop, and of course that's another piece of this as well regarding President Trump. On the other side of it is that doesn't matter if you don't have the soldiers, because it requires soldiers to hold land. There are no amount of drones that can actually hold territory and occupy territory. No. That's not how that works. There's incredible things you can do with technology, but it doesn't matter how many Starlinks you have or how many drones you have. You cannot hold territory without soldiers. And so what the Russian military is doing is saying, well, we may not have the technological advantage, but we do have the battlefield advantage in terms of numbers. So that's what our focus is on. We're not going to fight the technology. Right. We're going to fight the soldiers.